Over the last few years, we've gotten pretty used to AI that can write, that can draw, that can even code. It's been this amazing creative partner. But right now, there's a fundamental shift happening. We're moving beyond AI that just generates things into AI that actually does things. This is the agentic shift.
And really, this is the big question we're diving into. We've come to see AI as an assistant, right? It responds to our commands. But what happens when that assistant can actually act on its own? When it can pursue complex goals out in the digital world, all on our behalf? And, this isn't some far-off future tense question anymore. This is the new reality of agentic AI. So getting this distinction is absolutely crucial. Think of generative AI as the creator. You give it a prompt and it creates content for you. An image, a chunk of code, an email draft. It's a super powerful tool that we direct. Agentic AI, though, that's the doer. You give it a goal and it works autonomously to achieve it. It's not just a tool you're using, it's more like a digital worker you're managing. To really wrap our heads around this shift, we're going to break it all down. We'll start with defining what an agent really is, then we'll peek under the hood at how it actually makes decisions. After that, we'll look at how these agents are starting to form teams, explore the massive opportunities and the very real dangers they bring, and finally, figure out what all this means for our own jobs in this new world.
Okay, first up, let's get a bit more formal here and move from the general idea to a solid definition. What exactly are we talking about when we say agentic AI?
Here it is, the core definition. Agentic AI is all about autonomous, goal-directed behavior. The keywords to focus on are plan, use tools, and execute. See, this isn't just some advanced automation following a rigid script. This is about systems that can adapt to new information, adapt to changing conditions, all on their own, with very little human handholding. That autonomy, that's the real game changer.
So how does an agent actually pull all this off? Well, the magic is in this continuous 4-stage cycle. It's called the agentic loop. Let's break down how it actually thinks. This is basically the agent's cognitive cycle. First, it perceives its environment. It reads data, looks at files, takes in user requests. Then it reasons, using a large language model to come up with a plan. Critically, it has memory, which lets it keep track of what it's already done so it doesn't get lost. And finally, it acts. It uses tools and APIs to interact with other software, websites, whatever it needs to execute its plan. And this loop just keeps repeating until the goal is met.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. We're moving beyond these single do-it-all agents. The real power, it turns out, comes from creating specialized agents that can actually work together in teams. And this visual just nails the difference. A single agent, it's like a solo coder, working through a list of tasks one by one. It's powerful, sure, but it's limited. But a multi-agent system, that's like an orchestra. You have a conductor or an orchestrator coordinating all these specialized players. One agent for research, another for coding, a third for testing, all working in parallel to create something complex and totally integrated.
Gartner gives us the formal definition here, calling them collections of agents that interact to achieve complex goals. And this isn't just some idea on a whiteboard anymore. With more powerful language models and everything being connected with APIs, the big tech companies are pushing these systems out of the research lab into the real world.
This new reality demands a totally new role for us, the orchestrator. The human's job is less about doing the work and more about designing the system of workers. And to make this happen at scale, the whole industry needs to speak a common language. That's where open standards come in. Think of the Agentic AI Foundation, or AAIF, as the group that's writing the Universal Rulebook. And a huge part of that is the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which is basically a universal translator, letting all these different AIs and tools talk to each other seamlessly.
Okay, the promise here is just enormous. But like with any powerful new tech, there is a flip side. So let's get real about the high-stakes trade-offs.
The sheer scale of this shift is kind of hard to wrap your head around. The research firm IDC is forecasting a 1,000-fold increase in the compute power needed for these AI agents by 2027. And that doesn't just mean more servers. That number is a proxy for how many decisions, plans, and actions these agents are going to be taking every single second. This isn't an incremental change, it's a technological explosion.
And one of the biggest reasons for that explosion is speed. I mean, look at this. Development cycles that used to take weeks of our time can now be crunched down into days. For some things, like spinning up a minimum viable product, we are talking about hours. This just completely changes the economics of how software gets built.
But here's the reality check. Gartner predicts that over 40% of these agentic AI projects are just going to be abandoned. Why? Well, a lack of proper governance and a failure to actually show a return on investment. The hype is real for sure, but the path to actually getting value is really hard. And the cost of getting it wrong is huge.
Security researcher Simon Willison sums up the core risk just perfectly. He calls it the lethal trifecta. Think about it. You're giving an autonomous system access to your private data, you're exposing it to all kinds of untrusted content from the internet, and then you're giving it the authority to act. That is a seriously potent combination.
And these risks, they aren't just theoretical. We're already seeing agents misinterpret goals and take crazy unintended actions. We've seen real security breaches, like that Claw Havoc campaign. And of course, without solid governance, I'm talking about things like audit trails and kill switches, costs can just spiral out of control. The tricky part is that in these complex, multi-agent systems, one tiny error can cascade in ways you just can't predict, making them incredibly difficult to manage.
So, with all this incredible potential and all these significant risks, where does that leave us? Well, it completely redefines our role. It moves us from being the person on the assembly line to being the architect of the entire factory.
This slide just captures the whole transformation. The old role was the implementer. You were focused on the tactics, on writing every line of code. The new role, the orchestrator. You're no longer managing individual tasks, you're designing whole systems of agents, and you're managing the strategic outcomes. And that means our core skills have to evolve. It's becoming less about writing the perfect line of code and much more about elegant systems design. The skills that matter now are architectural. Can you design a team of agents? Can you break a huge problem down into smaller tasks they can actually solve? And maybe most importantly, can you be that final check for quality, setting the goals and the guardrails that make sure they succeed?
So we'll leave you with this thought. The fundamental challenge for professionals, especially in the tech world, is changing right under our feet. It's shifting from just coding a solution to orchestrating intelligent, autonomous systems. The real question isn't just what can we build anymore, it's how will you manage your new digital workforce?